this video, I want to talk about my view on watching people play games, whether you prefer YouTube or Twitch or VTubers. As I mentioned in my first video, my parental figures didn't have the best view on video games. They thought I was goofing off or lazy or avoiding work, and I guess in some vein that was true. Games were my escape from reality. There was a lot of stress and tension growing up in my life, and games helped alleviate that. I've had some interesting thoughts revolving gaming lately that I want to share. I think there is a very natural sort of desire there when it comes to games. Just like in nature, animals enjoy play. Even as full-grown adults, they'll still engage in play with others or with their young. And in nature, play for young animals especially provides training for their lives as adults. It's a safe, or mostly safe environment where the skills necessary for survival can be practiced without any real consequences. And this parallels pretty well with video games, I think. You can survive the wild, or construct your own creations, or fight massive wars, or do almost anything you can think of with little consequence other than a game over screen for the most part. Now, I also think that the value and skills gained from gaming are currently pretty downplayed and overlooked because gaming still kind of has the connotation of being for play, so it's not really that serious. But I have a story about myself that I'd like to share. I've been playing video games for nearly as long as I can remember. When I was in my early teens, I had a particular fondness for racing games. I think one of those games was Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, where you race while also trying to avoid the police. Or you are the police and try to capture racing players. I also played a lot of Mario Kart games, some other games that had racing too. And as far as I could tell, they all had pretty similar mechanics for driving because, well, they were simulating actual driving. Well, I logged hours and hours of play into that game. And when I had driving class at my school, I noticed that the feel of a car's steering was pretty familiar to me. Now, of course, it wasn't any replacement for actual driving, but there were things I'd picked up from my gaming that actually helped acclimate me to real life. I knew that you had to slow down in order to take a sharp turn without rolling your car over. I understood that you had to point the wheel more towards the end point of where you wanted to be while turning. And I understood that the faster you go, the further in advance you had to slow down to come to a proper stop without slamming your brakes and leaving trails of rubber behind you. In essence, I'd gotten a feel for the way cars moved and handled long before I ever got into the driver's seat. So back to actually watching other people play. I think there's a lot of value there too. It's not quite the same as the value you get when playing the game yourself. But I think that people primarily watch other people who more or less embody people that they themselves would like to be. When other people play games and give commentary, you can get a sort of window into various ways that they deal with different situations. For example, when some people encounter a frustrating situation, they make a big show of it, which can be a humorous way to view an otherwise stressful encounter. When some people make mistakes in the game, they might laugh it off, which I believe helps to reinforce in the viewer that mistakes don't need to be treated with such gravity. So I'll give an example of a streamer who I've watched for years now. He goes by the moniker of ChilledChaos, and I'll link his Twitch below. And I want to say that while I do prefer to watch his content, I think the people that he regularly produces content with are all absolutely phenomenal. Watching the dynamic each individual has with Chilled and with each other creates a beautiful experience for any viewer, in my humble opinion. Each person is truly deserving of just as much praise and admiration, and I could only wish that I had all the time in the world to follow each of them. I really do love all of them, and they all bring something different and entertaining to each session. Now, I usually watch Chilled's recordings while doing digital art. I prefer the recordings because I don't have to wait for ads, and buffering for streams is pretty touch and go right now for my current situation. I also like the ability to rewatch moments again and again. And I am very grateful that his content is absolutely free for me to enjoy, especially when money has been sticky for me for so long. And Chill does embody a lot of characteristics that I find appealing. He tends to be the host of most of the cooperative games, and he is wonderfully attentive to everyone. If there's anyone that's new to a game, he's very quick to offer explanations, to answer any questions they have, and if any confusion pops up, he clears things up without any judgment. I have seen several of his recordings where he has pulled aside someone facing technical issues and has literally spent 20 or even 30 minutes with them trying to resolve them. And mind you, this is when he's live and has an audience waiting for gameplay. I truly think that I have not had the pleasure of watching a more compassionate and conscientious host. On the flip side, he also embodies a very chaotic content creator sort of spirit. He constantly messes with his friends, sometimes for no other reason than it's amusing. Sometimes he does a certain bit, which is camouflaged as content creation, that ultimately helps him to win. And then sometimes he will do certain bits that are in direct opposition of his winning condition. So he creates a very fun and relaxed sort of atmosphere for the viewer, in my opinion. You can really tell that the regular group he hangs with share a strong bond together, and I think this is a very critical aspect to consider. Watching his content is not just an enjoyable experience for the viewer, just for the humor, in my opinion. Rather, the group interaction showcases great examples of healthy human relationships. I think you can sense in the way that I think you can sense in the way that they interact that there is a very strong core of understanding and trust between them. Now, this isn't to say there are never any conflicts, because there are, but as far as I've seen, these conflicts generally don't last long. They're addressed, understood, and then they move on. Or, if it's not that big of an issue, Chilled either makes light of it or drops it. The biggest factor to consider, in my opinion, is that their relationships are very strong, to the point where these conflicts or teasing or what have you have virtually no impact on the relationship, as far as I can tell. If anything, I think these experiences tend to just strengthen those bonds all the more. Now, he also does play some solo content now and then, and I'll admit I don't tend to watch that. I think for me the value comes mostly from his mischievous yet light-hearted play style, along with the dynamic between him and his friends. Now, this is just how it's impacted me. I see it as sort of social and interpersonal training, which might make it sound a little stiffer than it actually is. But essentially, you're viewing these sort of favorable behaviors over and over. And not only do you get a sort of vicarious enjoyment, but I think it also helps to program your own mind a bit to sort of adopt those behaviors so that you can better navigate social situations as well as your reactions to different situations. Again, just my thoughts. So, a bit of a tangent here, but a common piece of advice that I have heard while growing up is to choose your friends wisely. That you are the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and things of that nature. And I think that the people we regularly watch us, the people we regularly watch affect us in a similar way. I've got some real bad dry mouth, sorry about that. Even though we don't have one-on-one interactions with them for the most part, we have that same exposure of their behaviors, mannerisms, personality. I think we tend to pick up on the traits that we favor and try to emulate them, or at least I do. And I think that there's value to that, because for the people with large followings, they're clearly having success in creating value, earning money, doing what they enjoy. And knowing what I do, I think personality and how you face challenges are probably the biggest factors in whether or not you succeed in a business venture. But I haven't actually succeeded yet at this point, so take that as you will. So I think when we choose a creator to watch regularly, it's at least partially because there is some aspect of them we find appealing that we would like to emulate ourselves. Personally, I enjoyed Chilled's spontaneity and playful nature, among other things. For me, it helps ease some stress and reminds me not to take things too seriously. I think I still have issues with that, but I'm confident that watching Chilled has helped me. I wanted to talk about this because watching things like these sort of tends to get a bad rep, or at least I think they do. After all, if you're watching them, it's probably not with the intent of taking something from one of the sessions and using it to create value or bring in money for your own life. And that's a fair observation. I also think that when we view something in a negative light, something as a waste of time, we actually shut our minds off to the benefits that are provided. I think it limits our creativity. This aligns with what I shared in my first video for this series, and I'm going to link that below. I talked about how I always wanted to make money with Minecraft, but because I was taught growing up that games were childish and a waste of time, I was actually blocked from discovering just how I could provide real value with Minecraft for a long time. To even consider trying to make money with Minecraft was selfish and naive. So I do think creators do provide us with real value in our lives beyond just a reprieve. I think we idolize them to some degree, and we want to emulate them so that we can take on our own challenges with the same sort of attitude that they do. Problems in our lives tend to be the source of a lot of stress, I think, and this shines a window on how we can instead view and face them so that they don't seem quite as daunting as they originally did. Now, I do want to be very careful in how I word things in these videos, and that's why I use think and probably and phrases like that. I'm not an authority on any of these subjects, and even if I was, I'd probably still use this sort of style. That's because the older I've gotten, the more appreciation I've gained for the vast world that we live in, and I think there's only so much one person can conceive in their area of expertise. Our world is deeply interconnected and pretty chaotic. I don't think there's many people, if any, who predicted that an international pandemic would lead to a shortage of toilet paper. There's probably not many people, if any, who predicted that the creation of TikTok would eventually lead to people trying to steal Kias or eat Tide Pods or any number of the wild challenges that have surfaced. So my style of talking that I've taken on is a consistent reminder that I'm just sharing my experiences from the tiny corner of the universe I inhabit. That by no means am I declaring to know how people work or why people do the things they do, or why the world is the way that it is. These are just some thoughts that I have rattling around in my skull, and I want to share them because I think people might be able to get some sort of value from it. That maybe something in their lives is similar enough that they feel they might understand their situation a bit more, or they might want to try out some theories of their own that you might understand or want to try some theories.